In God, before the beginning, all things visible and invisible were potential, and of God's fullness have we all received. Before the beginning, negation was not. There was no other than God. As living substance, God is one. As life and substance, God is twain. He is the life, and she is the substance. And to speak of her is to speak of woman in her supremest mode. She is not nature. Nature is the manifestation of the qualities and properties with which, under suffusion of the life and spirits of God, substance is endowed. She is not matter, but is the potential essence of matter. She is not space, but is the within of space, its fourth and original dimension, that from which all proceed, the containing element of deity, and of which space is the manifestation. As original substance, the substance of all other substances, she underlies that whereof all things are made, and, like life and mind, is interior, mystical, spiritual, and discernible only when manifested in operation. In the unmanifest, she is the great deep, or ocean of infinitude, the heavenly Sophia, or wisdom, who encircles and embraces all things, of whom are dimension and form and appearance, and who is, herself, the substance of all souls. On the plane of manifestation, as the soul, macrocosmic and microcosmic, she appears as the daughter, mother, and spouse of God, exhibiting in a perfect humanity the fullness of the life she has received of God. She is mystically styled the Blessed Virgin Mary, and in token of her divine motherhood and heavenly derivation and attributes, is represented as clad in celestial azure, and bearing in her arms the infant man, in whom, regenerate and reborn of her own immaculate substance, the universe is redeemed. In her subsist inherently all the feminine qualities of the Godhead. Also is she mother of sorrows, whose bitterness pervades all things below, and only by her salting with affliction, purification by trial, and purchase of wisdom by her dear-bought experience, is the perfection that is of her attained. Nevertheless, she is also mother of joys, since her light is gilded by the solar rays, and of her pain and travail as the soul in the individual comes the regeneration of her children. And she is for them no more a sea of bitterness when once their warfare with evil has been accomplished. For then is she, Our Lady, glory of the Church triumphant, thus in the microcosm. In the macrocosm, she is that beginning or wisdom wherein God makes the heavens and the earth, the substantial waters upon whose face he, the energizing will, moves at every fresh act of creation, and the ark or womb from which all creatures proceed. And it is through the gathering together or coagulation of her waters that the dry land of the earth or body, which is matter, appears. For she is that spiritual substance which, polarizing interiorly, is, in the innermost, God, and coagulating exteriorly, becomes, in the outermost, matter. And she, again, it is, who, as the soul of humanity, regaining full intuition of God, overwhelms the earth with a flood of her waters, destroying the evil and renewing the good, and bearing unharmed on her bosom the elect few who have suffered her to build them up in the true image of God. Thus to these is she, mother of the living. And as on the physical plane man is not man, but only boy, rude, forward, and solicitous only to exert and exhibit his strength, until the time comes for him to recognize, appreciate, and appropriate her as the woman. So on the plane spiritual, man is not man, but only materialist, having all the deficiencies, intellectual and moral, the term implies, until the time comes for him to recognize, appreciate, and appropriate her as the soul, and, counting her as his better half, to renounce his own exclusively centrifugal impulsions, and yield to her centripetal attractions. Doing this with all his heart, he finds that she makes him, in the highest sense, man. For adding to his intellect her intuition, she endows him with that true manhood, that manhood of mind. Thus, by her aid, obtaining cognition of substance, and from the phenomenal fact ascending to the essential idea, he weds understanding to knowledge, and attains to certitude of truth, completing thereby the system of his thought. Rejecting as this age has done the soul and her intuition, man excludes from the system of his humanity the very idea of the woman, and renounces his proper manhood. An Esau he sells, and for a mess of pottage, his birthright, the faculty of intellectual comprehension. Cut off by his own act from the intuition of spirit, he takes matter for substance, and sharing the limitations of matter, loses the capacity for knowledge. Calling the creature thus self-mutilated, man, the age declares by the unanimous voice of its exponents, that man has no instrument of knowledge, and can know nothing with certainty, excepting, for it is not consistent even in this, that he can know nothing. Of this the age is quite sure, and, accordingly, complacent in its discovery, styles itself agnostic. And, as if expressly to demonstrate the completeness of its deprivation in respect of all that goes to the making of man, it has recourse to devices the most nefarious and inhuman on the pretext of thereby obtaining knowledge. Whereas had but the soul received the recognition and honor her due, no pretext had remained for the abominations of a science become wholly materialistic. For as the substance and framer of all things, she necessarily is competent for the interpretation of all things. All that she requires of man is that she be duly tended and heeded. No summit then will be too lofty of goodness or truth for man to reach by her aid. For, recognized in her plenitude, she reveals herself in her plenitude, and her fullness is the fullness of God.